When people hear the phrase transform your life, they often imagine a massive change, something dramatic almost overnight. But the truth is, real transformation doesn't come from one big moment. It comes from small, consistent actions practiced over time. And 90 days is long enough to completely reset your habits, reshape your mindset, and rewire your direction. Think of it this way, 90 days is not a lifetime, it's just 3 months. But in those 3 months, you have the opportunity to build a rhythm so strong that it can carry you forward for years to come. If you commit to very specific habits for this short window, the compounding effect is extraordinary. Now, here's what most people do wrong. They start with motivation, but motivation fades. They rely on excitement, but excitement is temporary. What really works is discipline, clarity, and a willingness to show up even when it doesn't feel easy. Because the truth is, transformation is not about intensity, it's about consistency. Let's imagine this if you woke up every day for the next 90 days with a clear plan, a healthy routine, an intentional focus on growth. How different would your life look? If you journaled every morning, reflected every night, took time for your health, and moved toward your goal step by step, what kind of person would you become? The 90-day framework is powerful because it is not too short to be meaningless and not too long to feel impossible. It gives your brain and body enough time to lock in new habits, to change your environment, and to prove to yourself that growth is possible. At the end of those 90 days, you're not just someone who tried. You're someone who has evidence. You showed up, you followed through, you changed. And here's the beautiful part. Once you succeed in 90 days, you no longer have to believe in transformation as a theory. You've lived it. You've seen it, you've proven it, and that belief will carry you beyond the 90 days into an entirely new life. So the invitation is simple: commit to yourself. For 90 days, practice the discipline of growth. Not perfection, not comparison, just growth. Watch how your confidence builds, how your mindset shifts, and how your life begins to transform from the inside out. 5 keynotes of the speech transformation is built through consistent small actions, not sudden dramatic change. 90 days is the perfect time frame to reset habits and build lasting momentum. Discipline is more powerful than motivation. Consistency beats intensity. Daily intentional practices like journaling, reflection, health, and goal setting create visible results. Completing 90 days proves transformation is possible and builds belief for long-term change. Transformation is built through consistent small actions, not sudden dramatic change. This idea may seem almost too simple, but when you take a closer look at how growth really happens in life, you'll see that the biggest differences come from the smallest, often unnoticed decisions that compound over time. When most people imagine changing their lives, they think of giant leaps, quitting a job overnight, moving to another country, starting an intense new routine, or completely reinventing themselves in a matter of weeks. While these sudden shifts may look impressive, they rarely last because they are fueled by bursts of motivation rather than grounded consistency. Human beings are creatures of habit, and habits are not built in a day. They are built one choice, one action, one repeated effort at a time. Think about how water shapes stone. A single drop seems powerless. But when water falls in the same spot day after day, year after year, it creates patterns, smooths rough edges, and even carves through solid rock. The same principle applies to our lives. Waking up 15 minutes earlier doesn't seem like much. Writing just 1 paragraph a day feels insignificant. Choosing water instead of soda looks trivial in the moment. Yet when practiced daily, these small decisions begin to add up. And before you realize it, they change the trajectory of your health, your mindset, and your future. Transformation is never about the single dramatic act. It is about the quiet persistence of small acts. Many people underestimate this because small actions don't give instant results. If you eat a salad today, you won't suddenly be healthier tomorrow. If you exercise once, you won't instantly become stronger. If you read 1 page of a book, you won't suddenly become wiser. This lack of immediate reward tricks people into thinking small actions don't matter. But the truth is, small actions matter precisely because they compound invisibly at first. For weeks or even months, you might not see much difference. But then slowly you notice your body feels more energized, your thoughts become clearer, your mood more stable. The change doesn't happen all at once. It unfolds gradually until one day you look back and realize how far you've come. Consistency is the bridge between intention and transformation. Anyone can decide to change, but only those who repeat small positive actions daily see the result. Take learning a skill, for example. If you try to master a language in a week, you will exhaust yourself and quickly forget most of what you crammed. But if you spend 20 minutes every day learning vocabulary, listening and practicing, within months you will notice real fluency building. It's not the intensity of effort in a single day that transforms you. It's the repeated exposure, the rhythm of practice, the steady layering of small wins over time. This is why people who commit to consistency often outperform those who rely on intensity. Someone who runs 1 mile every day for 90 days will achieve more than someone who runs 20 miles once and never again. Someone who saves a small amount of money daily will build far more wealth over time than someone who tries to save a large sum once but lacks the discipline to continue. It is the little deposits into the bank of discipline that create the compound interest of transformation. The beauty of small, consistent actions is that they also build identity. When you do something repeatedly, no matter how small, you begin to see yourself differently. A person who writes 1 page a day starts to believe they are a writer. A person who walks every evening starts to see themselves as someone who values health. A person who reflects every night begins to identify as someone who is self-aware and intentional. These identities, once formed, become powerful anchors that make transformation sustainable. It is no longer just about what you do, it becomes who you are. On the other hand, sudden dramatic change can be dangerous because it often leads to burnout or discouragement. If you decide to wake up at 4 a.m., run 10 miles, meditate for an hour, and completely cut sugar out of your diet all at once, you may last a few days. But the human brain resists drastic change. The initial excitement will fade, and without the foundation of consistent small steps, the likelihood of giving up is high. This is why gyms are crowded in January but empty by March. People try to do too much too fast and then blame themselves when they can't keep up. The truth is, it's not about willpower, it's about strategy. And the best strategy is to commit to small, repeatable actions that build momentum. When you look at the lives of people who have truly transformed, athletes, leaders, entrepreneurs, thinkers, you will notice a common thread. Their greatness did not come from one single event. It came from daily habits practiced relentlessly. Behind every breakthrough moment was a long season of small, consistent actions that nobody saw. The overnight success story is a myth. Every overnight success was actually years of quiet, unseen discipline finally coming to light. So when you think about transforming your life, don't ask, what's the one big thing I should do? Ask instead, what is the small thing I can do every day without fail? The answer to that question, repeated consistently, will bring you further than any sudden burst of effort ever could. Transformation belongs to those who choose small actions and commit to them long enough to let them work their quiet magic. 90 days is the perfect time frame to reset habits and build lasting momentum because it strikes a balance between being achievable and being long enough to create real change. When people think of building a new habit or breaking an old one, they often underestimate the amount of time it takes. A single week is too short because the mind and body are still resisting the unfamiliar. A single month is progress, but it is often not enough to deeply ingrain a new behavior into one's identity. On the other hand, a year can feel overwhelming, distant, and impossible to fully imagine. 90 days sits right in the sweet spot. It gives enough time for new patterns to become natural while remaining close enough for people to stay committed without losing focus. Psychologists and behavioral scientists often talk about the habit loop, the process of cue, routine, and reward that governs much of human behavior. To reset this loop, repetition is essential. Doing something once or twice does not rewrite the brain's wiring, but doing it consistently for 3 months forces the brain to recognize this behavior as the new normal. For instance, someone who has always reached for their phone immediately after waking may struggle to break this reflex in the first week. By the 3rd or 4th week, resistance still exists, but by the 2nd month, the brain begins to expect the new routine, whether that's journaling, exercising, or reading. By the end of 90 days, the old habit loses its grip and the new one stands stronger because it has been reinforced over and over. Momentum is another key factor that makes the 90-day framework powerful. Momentum does not build in a single day. It builds as actions accumulate. Think of pushing a heavy wheel. At first, it barely moves, but with each push, the effort compounds, and eventually the wheel spins with ease. In life, 90 days is enough time to experience the weight of momentum. For the first few weeks, progress may feel slow, but by the 2nd month, results begin to appear. Physical changes, mental clarity, improved productivity, or emotional stability start to show, and this fuels motivation to continue. By the 3rd month, momentum has taken on a life of its own, making it easier to stay consistent. Another reason 90 days works so well is that it creates a tangible finish line. Human beings are wired to work toward goals that feel within reach. Telling yourself to change for the rest of your life can feel daunting, almost paralyzing. But telling yourself you only need to commit to 3 months feels doable. 90 days gives you structure, a clear beginning, and a clear end. The brain thrives on structure, and with that deadline in place, people are more likely to push themselves to stay disciplined. Ironically, when the 90 days end, most people find they do not want to stop because the new habits have already become part of who they are. Consider how businesses often operate in quarters. A financial quarter is about 90 days, and in that period, companies measure growth, track results, and evaluate progress. This is not accidental. It mirrors how humans also process time. 3 months is long enough to see patterns, trends, and outcomes, but short enough to reset and adapt. Applying the same rhythm to personal growth aligns naturally with how we measure progress in other areas of life. When you treat your life like a series of 90-day sprints, you gain clarity, urgency, and accountability. The 90-day framework also helps overcome the biggest enemy of transformation: inconsistency. Many people start strong but fade quickly because they lack milestones. 90 days gives you checkpoints along the way. After 30 days, you can look back and see the start of a shift. After 60 days, you see tangible proof that your efforts are paying off. And by 90 days, you have both results and a new identity forming. That identity is critical because habits stick when they shift from something you do to something you are. A person who works out for 90 consecutive days doesn't just exercise. They begin to see themselves as someone who is healthy. A person who writes for 90 days doesn't just journal. They see themselves as a writer. It's also important to understand that 90 days gives enough time to fail, recover, and still succeed. In 1 week or even 1 month, a single mistake can feel like failure. But in 90 days, a missed day or a bad week is not the end of the journey. It is a bump along the road. The longer time frame gives room for imperfection, and that flexibility makes it more sustainable. Transformation does not require flawless execution. It requires persistence. 90 days allows persistence to outweigh perfection. When people commit to 90 days, they often surprise themselves with how much they can achieve in such a short but focused period. Physical changes like weight loss or strength building become visible. Mental changes like sharper focus or reduced stress become noticeable. Emotional shifts like improved confidence and resilience begin to solidify. And most importantly, people prove to themselves that they can change. Once you have that evidence, once you can look back and say, I stayed consistent for 90 days, you carry forward a belief that you can tackle bigger goals with the same framework. 90 days is not just a number. It is a window of transformation that balances challenge with possibility. It is long enough to break through resistance and short enough to stay achievable. It builds momentum, rewires habits, and creates identity. For anyone seeking real change, 90 days is the doorway through which small steps evolve into lasting transformation. Discipline is more powerful than motivation. Consistency beats intensity. Motivation is often where people start when they want to change something in their lives. It feels exciting, it feels energizing, and it gives a rush of hope that things can finally be different. But motivation is fleeting. It comes and goes, influenced by mood, energy levels, external circumstances, and even the weather. If you rely only on motivation, you will succeed on the days when you feel inspired and fail on the days when you don't. Discipline, on the other hand, is steady. Discipline does not ask if you feel like doing it, it simply insists that you do it. That is why discipline is far more powerful than motivation and why consistency always beats intensity. Think about the people who reach the highest levels of success in any field. Athletes don't train only when they feel motivated. Writers don't write only when they feel inspired. Leaders don't make decisions only on the days they feel confident. They all rely on discipline, the ability to show up and put in the work regardless of how they feel. Discipline creates a rhythm that is not dependent on emotion, and this rhythm is what carries people through the difficult stretches when motivation fades. Consistency built on discipline has another advantage: it compounds over time. Imagine brushing your teeth only when you felt motivated. You might do it once or twice a week, but the long-term damage would be obvious. The habit of brushing twice daily is not fueled by excitement, it is fueled by discipline. The same principle applies to bigger goals. Reading one chapter a day does not feel like much, but if done consistently, it results in dozens of books over a year. Saving a small amount of money each week doesn't feel significant, but discipline turns it into financial security over time. These outcomes don't come from bursts of intensity or waves of motivation. They come from the steady power of discipline. Intensity often gives the illusion of progress. Someone might work out for 3 hours one day, convinced they are making a breakthrough. But if they skip the next 5 days, they are worse off than the person who exercised for just 30 minutes consistently every day. Intensity creates spikes, but transformation comes from patterns. Life rewards persistence, not occasional effort. It is not about how much you can do in a single moment, but about what you can sustain over time. Discipline also builds trust with yourself. When you follow through on a commitment consistently, even when it is difficult, you prove to yourself that you can be relied upon. This self-trust becomes the foundation of confidence. Motivation may inspire you to start, but only discipline convinces you that you can finish. When you know you can finish, you stop doubting yourself. You no longer need external validation or constant bursts of inspiration because you have built an inner certainty that you can do hard things repeatedly. The truth is, discipline does not always feel pleasant in the moment. It often requires sacrifice. It might mean choosing to work when you'd rather relax, to eat healthy when you crave comfort food, or to focus when distractions tempt you. But the discomfort of discipline is temporary, while the rewards are lasting. In contrast, the comfort of avoiding discipline is temporary, and the regret it creates is lasting. People who rely only on motivation often look back wishing they had been more disciplined, because they realize that motivation never had the power to sustain them in the long run. Consider how habits are actually formed. At first, discipline feels forced. You have to push yourself to wake up early, to exercise, to read, or to focus. But over time, consistency transforms these actions into automatic behaviors. They stop requiring intense effort because they become part of your identity. This is the hidden gift of discipline. The longer you practice it, the less you need to fight yourself. What once required willpower becomes natural, and this is how lives are transformed. Discipline also protects you against excuses. On days when you don't feel like working, motivation gives you permission to quit. Discipline, however, overrides excuses with action. It doesn't matter if you feel tired, uninspired, or distracted. Discipline tells you to do the work anyway. And once you start, something powerful happens. Action creates momentum, and momentum often reignites motivation. Ironically, it is discipline that often brings motivation back, not the other way around. If you look closely, you'll see that most long-term achievements in life are not about brilliance or bursts of energy. They are about small, consistent efforts sustained through discipline. A healthy body is not built in a week of motivated workouts, but in years of disciplined choices. A thriving career is not created in one intense project, but in consistent contributions over time. Meaningful relationships are not strengthened by occasional grand gestures, but by steady, disciplined acts of care and attention. Every area of life responds to consistency, and consistency is born from discipline. When you shift your focus from chasing motivation to cultivating discipline, you free yourself from the ups and downs of emotion. You stop waiting to feel inspired and start building a life where progress is inevitable. You learn to value showing up over showing off, persistence over perfection, and patterns over peaks. In the end, motivation may help you begin, but it is discipline that carries you through. Consistency rooted in discipline will always outlast the intensity of fleeting effort, and that is why discipline is the true engine of transformation. Daily intentional practices like journaling, reflection, health, and goal setting create visible results because they shift the focus from living on autopilot to living with awareness and purpose. Most people move through their days reacting to circumstances, letting external events dictate their actions and emotions. But intentional practices bring clarity, structure, and direction. When you take time every day to deliberately engage in activities that strengthen the mind, body, and spirit, you create a framework for growth that compounds over time. These practices may seem small in the moment, but their cumulative effect becomes transformative. Journaling is one of the simplest yet most powerful practices. Putting thoughts on paper allows you to organize your mind, release stress, and make sense of your experiences. Many people carry unprocessed emotions, scattered ideas, and mental clutter. When you write daily, even for just a few minutes, you create space for clarity. Journaling gives you a record of your progress, a mirror to your growth, and a tool for self-awareness. Over time, it shows patterns in your behavior and thinking that you would not have noticed otherwise. With this awareness, you gain the ability to make conscious changes instead of repeating the same cycles unconsciously. Reflection works hand in hand with journaling, but can also stand alone. Taking time at the end of each day to reflect on your actions, choices, and interactions allows you to learn continuously. Reflection prevents days from blending together without meaning. It helps you ask important questions. What went well today? What could I improve? Did I live according to my values? Did I spend time on what truly matters? These questions create accountability and keep you aligned with your bigger goals. Without reflection, days pass quickly, but with it, every day becomes a stepping stone toward intentional growth. Health practices are equally essential because the body and mind are deeply connected. Daily choices like exercising, eating nourishing food, staying hydrated, and resting properly determine the quality of your energy. Energy is the currency of life. Without it, you cannot focus, create, or pursue goals effectively. Too often, people neglect their health while chasing success, only to realize later that their lack of well-being prevents them from enjoying the very achievements they worked for. By making health a daily priority, you build a strong foundation that supports every other area of life. Even small actions like walking for 20 minutes, stretching, or drinking enough water make a difference when practiced consistently. Over 90 days, these small steps can dramatically improve energy levels, mood, and resilience. Goal setting ties all these practices together. Without goals, actions lose direction. Setting daily goals creates focus and momentum. Goals do not have to be grand or overwhelming. In fact, small, realistic goals are more effective because they are achievable and build confidence. Writing down what you want to accomplish each day ensures that you are moving forward rather than drifting. It also creates a sense of completion at the end of the day, reinforcing your commitment. Over time, daily goals add up to significant achievements, just like individual bricks form a strong building. The true power of these practices lies in their ability to reinforce one another. Journaling enhances reflection by providing a record of your thoughts. Reflection deepens your goal setting by clarifying what matters most. Health practices provide the energy and focus needed to pursue your goals. Goal setting gives you motivation to follow through on both journaling and health practices. When combined, they create a cycle of growth that becomes stronger with repetition. Another hidden benefit of these intentional practices is that they shift your identity. When you practice journaling daily, you begin to see yourself as someone who values clarity and self-expression. When you reflect each night, you see yourself as someone who learns and grows. When you care for your health, you identify as someone who respects their body and energy. When you set and achieve goals, you build the identity of someone who follows through. These identities anchor the habits, making them sustainable. You no longer do these things just because should. You do them because they reflect who you are becoming. It is also important to recognize that these practices create visible results, not only in the long term, but also in the short term. After a few days of journaling, you may already feel less overwhelmed. After a week of reflection, you may notice better decisions. After 2 weeks of health-focused habits, your energy may noticeably improve. After setting and meeting goals daily for a month, your productivity may double. These early results fuel motivation, and when combined with discipline, they lead to lasting transformation. Over the course of 90 days, these practices change the rhythm of life. Instead of drifting without intention, you live with purpose. Instead of reacting, you respond thoughtfully. Instead of running on low energy, you operate with vitality. Instead of hoping for growth, you track and measure it daily. This shift is what makes transformation possible. The visible results come not from extraordinary effort, but from ordinary practices done consistently with intention. By committing to journaling, reflection, health, and goal setting every day, you lay down the building blocks of a life that is not only more productive, but also more meaningful. Completing 90 days proves transformation is possible and builds belief for long-term change because it gives you undeniable evidence that you can commit, follow through, and achieve real results. For many people, the biggest obstacle to transformation is not a lack of knowledge or resources, but a lack of belief in themselves. They start with doubt, telling themselves they are not disciplined enough, not consistent enough, or not capable of change. This self-doubt becomes a cycle, leading them to quit before they even see progress. But when you commit to 90 days and see it through, you break that cycle by proving to yourself that you can do hard things and stay the course. This proof becomes the foundation for lasting confidence and future growth. Belief is powerful, and it is always shaped by evidence. If your past is filled with unfinished attempts, you carry evidence that you can't finish. That evidence reinforces hesitation every time you think about starting something new. Completing 90 days creates new evidence. Evidence that says you can be consistent, you can endure, and you can follow through even when it's uncomfortable. This shifts your inner narrative from, I don't think I can, to, I've done it before and I can do it again. That change in mindset is often more valuable than the specific results you gain during those 90 days because it rewires your confidence for everything that comes next. The results of 90 days are tangible, and that visibility is part of what strengthens belief. For example, someone who commits to exercising daily for 90 days will see physical changes in their body, whether in strength, endurance, or overall health. Someone who writes every day will see pages pile up, forming the beginning of a book, a journal, or a collection of ideas. Someone who practices gratitude daily will feel a noticeable shift in their outlook and emotional resilience. These visible results are not abstract, they are concrete reminders that change is real. When you can look at your body, your work, or your mindset and see what 90 days has created, it becomes impossible to deny that transformation is possible. Another important aspect is the sense of identity that forms after completing such a commitment. Identity is shaped by repeated actions, and 90 days is long enough for those actions to take root. You no longer just exercise, you become someone who values health. You no longer just write, you become a writer. You no longer just set goals, you become someone who follows through. These new identities carry into the future, making it easier to continue the habits beyond 90 days. The more you repeat a behavior, the more it becomes who you are, and once it is part of your identity, you no longer rely on external pressure to sustain it. The act of completing 90 days also teaches resilience. Along the way, there will be days when you miss a step, feel unmotivated, or face setbacks. Finishing despite those moments proves that imperfection does not stop progress. This realization is liberating because many people quit when they make mistakes, believing that one failure cancels out their effort. 90 days shows you that failure can be part of the journey without derailing it entirely. You learn to bounce back, adjust, and keep going. This resilience is a crucial skill, not only for personal growth, but for every area of life, from career to relationships. Perhaps the most overlooked outcome of completing 90 days is the momentum it creates. Once you have lived through the discipline, challenges, and victories of a 90-day commitment, you build a rhythm that is difficult to break. Momentum reduces resistance. Starting something new always feels heavy, but once you are already in motion, it feels natural to continue. After 90 days, continuing for another 30 or 60 days doesn't feel impossible. It feels like the next logical step. That is how long-term change happens. What starts as a 90-day challenge becomes a 6-month lifestyle and eventually a lifelong habit. Completing 90 days also reshapes your relationship with time. At first, 3 months may seem long, but once you complete it, you realize how quickly it passes. This changes your perspective on future goals. If you can transform in 3 months, then a year no longer feels intimidating. You begin to see time not as an enemy, but as an ally. You recognize that with patience and persistence, you can accomplish much more than you once believed. This shift in perspective helps you set bigger goals with greater confidence because you trust the process. Finally, completing 90 days gives you a personal story of transformation. Stories are powerful motivators. When you have your own story of change, it becomes easier to inspire yourself in moments of doubt and even to inspire others. You can look back and say, I remember when I thought I couldn't do it, and then I did. That story becomes a source of strength you can return to whenever challenges arise. It reminds you that transformation is not just something you hope for. It is something you have lived and experienced. In the end, the true value of completing 90 days is not just in the habits you build or the results you achieve, but in the belief it creates. You shift from hoping transformation is possible to knowing it is possible. That belief is what carries you forward long after the 90 days are over, turning short-term commitment into long-term change. Once you prove it to yourself, no one can take that proof away, and it becomes the foundation for everything you achieve in the future. Transformation is never about waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect plan, or the perfect surge of motivation. It is about making a decision to begin, choosing small but intentional actions, and giving yourself the time to let those actions shape your identity. Over 90 days, you discover that change is not some distant dream, but a process that unfolds through discipline, reflection, and daily practice. You learn that consistency carries more weight than intensity, that your health and mindset fuel every step forward, and that belief in yourself grows stronger with every promise you keep. The truth is, 90 days is not just a challenge. It is a window into what is possible when you decide to live with purpose. It is proof that you can let go of old habits, create new ones, and step into a version of yourself you may not have thought possible. And once you've walked through that 90-day journey, you realize something even more powerful. This is only the beginning. Because the real gift of 90 days is not just the results you achieve, but the confidence that you can transform again and again for the rest of your life.